my carbs. You've heard people say, I've got to watch my carbs. Well, what do they mean when we have to watch our carbs? And is that really important? So you're going to learn tonight that it's not near as important as what a lot of people have thought it was, but you have to watch the right carbs. So we're going to delve into that, and it's going to be fun. I love chemistry. So anyway.
They don't know this is chemistry yet.
Okay, but if I say something...
He cannot keep a secret, let me tell you.
We are going to be talking about chemistry, carbohydrate chemistry tonight. And if I say something that you don't understand, just give me the sign. You're over my head. Don't understand it. I'll try to say it in a way that you will understand. I'm so glad each of you came back again, and I'd like to know how you've been doing this week. Is anybody here within 1 pound of their beginning weight? Want to see your hand? 1, 2, 3.
I don't have my card. I can't tell you that.
Oh,
well, this is important stuff. So,
it's good to keep your card until he's done asking all those questions.
So here's the deal. Here's the deal. Whatever your starting weight was on night 1, the first week we allowed you to gain 2 pounds. And then we want you to start trimming 1 to 2 pounds a week. So if you're back to where we started or below,
I gained weight.
You gained weight more than 2 pounds?
It's all that fiber.
She says it's all that fiber she's been eating, but across the aisle there's someone that lost a bunch of weight.
Oh yeah? How much are we talking about? Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, I've lost 6 pounds.
Give her a hand. Woohoo! That is great.
6 pounds.
6 pounds. That is awesome. Anyone else come close to 6 pounds?
I lost weight. Well,
How much? You mind sharing?
it was 140 at the beginning, I think. Oh, 145, and I'm 139.
Give her a hand. Yes. She also lost 6 pounds. That is awesome. That's what the fiber will do to you. And so that is awesome. Now we want you to lose about 1 to 2 pounds a week. So if anyone is 1 pound more than they were when we started the class, you're still on target. You're still on target, okay? And I have lost almost 2 pounds. I'm doing this with you. I lost initially when I had pre-diabetes. I've lost 35 pounds since then. But I gained about 15 back. So I need to trim it back off again to make sure that I stay in the right way. And this class was just a real good excuse for me. I need to pull that little bit back off again. I tend to put all my weight right here. So anyway.
What about water? What about exercise?
Okay. Anyone met their water goal this week? Yes, we see several hands around the room. Very good. And that's reason to celebrate. Let's see. How about fiber? How many people have been getting at least the 30 grams of fiber, or for men, 35 grams of fiber or more a day?
I'm pretty sure.
Yes. Look at all those hands. That's wonderful.
Very good.
Okay, and...
water.
Well, before we go to water, I want to know how many people have gotten at least 30 varieties of fiber foods this past week?
30 varieties.
Oh, yes.
Well, I ate the same thing over and over
Well, that's a problem.
until I used it up. I eat it, so I have to eat it while I'm getting.
Okay, she said her husband won't eat it, so she has to eat it. She has to eat up what she has.
Okay, but what we want to do is we want to see you eat a wide variety of fiber foods. So we want you to do at least 30 varieties of high fiber foods a week. So if you had an orange yesterday and you're doing an orange today, you might want to change that to a pear because every food has its own fiber fingerprint. So try to get as wide a variety of fiber foods as you can within a week. So aim for 30. I have seen people plateau and just not be able to reverse because they weren't eating a wide enough variety of fiber. So if you increase that, then that increases your chance of growing the right bacteria in your bowel, and that's one of the things that helps you get over diabetes.
And then the wider the variety in the fiber, also be a much more wider variety of nutrients, because everything has different nutrients.
That's true, and the blessing about this is when you eat the high fiber foods, you're also eating the high nutrient foods, and if you feed your body the high nutrient foods, the cells will heal themselves.
I think as I'm thinking about it, I think I must have done that because, and then that finished it off, so I know.
All right. Well, this is good. She thinks she made her quota this week.
They
of
just
30.
fixed some really delicious green smoothies for them to sample. So sorry you're missing out, those that are watching online, but it was really good to be here and get to taste that. So she said that has pushed her over and helped her get the 30 varieties of food.
What's the hummus
So
and
the hummus and celery, yes, those are all good. Yes, good.
I did it.
Okay, very good. Give her a hand. That's right. She's working hard. She's trying to make this happen. And each of you, remember that it is the aggregate of all of these decisions that you're making that actually will help you reverse. And some people don't do a whole lot. They don't feel like, but it's those multiple little decisions that you're learning about that will help you to be successful. So, bless the Lord, O my soul, the scriptures say, and forget not all his benefits, who forgiveth all thine iniquities, but here's the important part for us tonight, who healeth all thy diseases, and who redeemeth thy life from destruction. So remember that it's God who actually does the healing. When we align ourselves with the health principles that he's given us in the scriptures, it just happens.
So remember that this program is for educational purposes only. Has anybody talked to their doctor or dropped the letter off at the doctor's office for them?
Good.
That's important.
Good.
Yes. Oh, okay. Well, hopefully you'll find another one that will support what you're doing. But you want to work with your doctors. That's who you've hired to help you to manage your care and your medications and all that. And if you're making changes in your lifestyle, chances are really good you're not going to need the same medications that you've been on. And so that's why it is so important to talk with your physician. Keep them informed of what's happening so that they can help you to safely make changes.
And before we go any further, if you'll indulge me one more time, I would like to have a prayer just for you. Heavenly Father, I thank you for the results that people are having, for each pound that has been lost, for each gram of fiber that's been consumed, for all the efforts that people have been making to change and improve their lifestyle. And Lord, I present your promise right here and ask that you will be with each people and heal their diseases because we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, our learning objectives for tonight is we're going to be talking about the different carbohydrates. And so we want you to be able to understand the basic units that make up the carbs. Also to recognize sugars by their names and state the benefit of resistant starch. That is something that's really important and helpful to us. And then we want you to name the antidote for fructose. Those are not difficult. You'll understand that as we go through. Okay, I want to tell Ginger's story tonight. Ginger stopped weighing, she told us, when she got to 250 pounds. She had been a friend of ours many, many years ago, and we had lost track of her. She and her husband had moved up north. And she'd gone through some tough times in her life, ended up going through a divorce, and she suffered from anxiety and depression and anxiety. And in fact, she was diagnosed with these things in 1987. I verified some of this with her this evening. She's watching the program. I told her I've got to get her story right. So I verified. And even though we have that she was diagnosed with diabetes, she actually was never officially diagnosed, though her A1C was 7.9. Was she a diabetic?
Yes.
Absolutely. But she was not on any medication for that. She was on a lot of other medications. She ended up with congestive heart failure, she had sleep apnea, and finally she gave up her driver's license and she moved into an assisted living facility. And she had been there for quite a while when Steve's sister invited her to move down to Tennessee and be close to her. And she vowed that she would help her and that they could do some things together, yes.
Can you share with us, what age was it when she went into a facility and
About
all of these?
62.
She was 62,
Okay,
so young lady.
yes.
And so she was on a lot of medications for depression and anxiety. At one point, she was on 7 psych medicines alone. Now, Ginger has made such a transformation in her life that she has given us permission to share her story and to share her pictures even, because it is just amazing what has happened. But we went over to the area where she lives. We were staying at his sister's place, and we were doing a weekend program, actually at a library in the community. And while we were at Sarah's home, Ginger came over. We had no idea all her health issues. But by this point, she had moved to Tennessee. She was living in an assisted living facility there, close to her friend Sarah. And so she came over and she was talking with us and we were catching up on news and stuff. And she said, "What are you all doing?" And we explained to her that we had this ministry, reversing, just teaching people how to reverse type 2 diabetes. And she asked us all kinds of questions, and we had about 15 minutes with her. And then she left and went home, and we went and we did our program. Well, we started hearing little reports that Ginger was doing better, and Ginger was doing better. And we said, "Well, what's going on?" Well, it turns out she went back to the assisted living, and she had her own little kitchenette. She ate most of her meals down in the cafeteria, but up on her level on the 3rd floor, and they had an elevator so she could ride the elevator. She would push her walker to the elevator. But in her apartment, she made her a taco soup. And I believe that I have added that in your book, Ginger's Taco Soup. But she made the taco soup and she ate it every single day on top of the food that she was getting down in the cafeteria. Well, she started feeling better and she started losing weight. And she decided that she could go up and down the stairs instead of riding the elevator. Well, she felt better after going up and down the stairs, and so she would go up and down the stairs 20 times a day just to get some exercise in. Then the staff saw that she was doing so much better, and so they took her outside and would walk with her on the paved area. Now, she was walking with her walker still. Ginger had been falling a lot, but she became a lot more stable on her feet. So time moved on, and she was losing weight. The anxiety was going away. Her A1C became normal. Her congestive heart failure went away. Sleep apnea went away. Her physician started taking her off of the psych medicines, and just 3 or 4 weeks ago, she came off of the last medication that she had been on. Now, when we shared this story once before, a physician came up to us and said, "Once these people get on psych medicines, you don't take them off." Well, when the Lord healed Ginger, He has helped her to get off of all these things. So she went and got her driver's license back. She bought a car. She moved out of the assisted living, got her own apartment. She got involved in church again. She was rebaptized, and when she was rebaptized, she brought a friend of hers that she had been doing studies with that was baptized. Now Ginger is very active in the church. She plays the piano for most of their services. She leads out teaching either one of the adult classes or kids classes. So it's amazing to see the transformation for Ginger. We are just really happy for her.
Well, that's a wonderful success story, wouldn't you say? And it can happen when you change just some basic lifestyle principles. I don't think Ginger, at the outset, I don't think she really realized what she was doing to herself when she started changing her lifestyle for the better. I don't think she knew what this would end up like, but she kept forging ahead, and it's like each pound that she lost was something that spurred her on to do better. So we're really proud of what she's done and for what God has done in her life as well. So we're going to talk now about carbohydrate chemistry. And when you eat something for nourishment, for food, for energy, we categorize those as macronutrients. So you have carbohydrates, you have fats, and you have protein. And within the category of carbohydrates, there's sugars, there's starches, there's fiber, and there's cellulose. Fats, you have fatty acids and triglycerides, and then proteins and amino acids fall into the other categories. There is one other macronutrient that's called water, but you don't get calories from that, so I didn't list that on here. So when we break carbohydrates down into their basic units, they come down into what we call simple sugars.
So now we're getting into the chemistry. Hang on here. He really will help you understand this, but like he said, if you get lost, let us know, and he'll restate it.
Okay, so when the sunshine comes down and hits the leaf of the plant in the presence of water, which is water inside the plant, you have a process that occurs. Most of you learned about this by 6th grade. It's called what? Photosynthesis. Very good. Photosynthesis. And one of the primary molecules that's formed as a result of photosynthesis happening is a molecule that we call glucose. So the scientific name for glucose is just that. And I've represented it as a red oval on the screen. There is another one that is fairly common, but in much lesser quantity, and that's called fructose. You've heard of fructose, I'm sure, from a variety of sources. We're going to talk more about each one of these as we move along. There is a third one, still has the same molecular configuration, composition, not the shape. The shape of the molecule is a little different, but it's made up of exactly the same number of carbon atoms and hydrogen atoms, and that's called galactose. And then these molecules, in nature, a lot of them are held together by just weak hydrostatic bonds. It's just like they reach out, the molecules reach out and they hold hands. So when you have two glucose molecules that hold hands, what sugar do you have? Maltose, that's right. And when you have a glucose and a fructose that hold hands, you have another sugar that's called sucrose. Very good. And when you have a glucose and a galactose that hold hands, then you have lactose. Okay, so the big thing I want you to remember right here is when you're reading food labels, you pull out the package and there's a nutritional thing, and then down there you have ingredients. Now, oftentimes the food manufacturers know that if they made the first ingredient as sugar, you would put it back on the shelf and you wouldn't buy it. So what they do, oftentimes they break the sugars down. And they'll call it by different names. And sometimes you'll see sucrose and fructose or high fructose corn syrup, and then you'll see dehydrated cane juice. It's all different names for sugar, but if you see a word that's listed on there, on your nutritional facts, on ingredients that says OSC, you know it is a sugar. It is a sugar. Now, when we have starches, then the starches reach out and they hold hands. Now, in nature, glucose is really plentiful. So you'll have chains of glucose molecules that we call starches, and they'll be 200 units to maybe up to 800 units long of just nothing but glucose molecules all strung together. And when you go to the doctor's office and the doctor orders a blood glucose, he is measuring for the glucose. He's not measuring for fructose or galactose. He's measuring for just glucose. So that's the sugar that we monitor with, when we do blood tests. When you do your morning blood sugar test, you're measuring the amount of glucose. And so you can see eating starches is going to supply a plentiful amount of glucose to drive your blood sugar up. Now, there is another form of carbohydrate that we call fiber. And these are just chains of glucose molecules that get too long and too branched for us to break apart into sugars. You don't have the enzymes that will break those large molecules apart. Cattle do. The cows can go out and eat grass, but you eat grass and you're not going to digest it. It's probably going to give you a bowel obstruction or something like that because of the high amount of fiber, but you don't have the enzymes to break it down. So then there's even longer chains yet with many more branches. And I've just illustrated them very simply on the screen, but that's called cellulose. And that will be the woody fiber. And yes, you eat that too. In fact, if you look, you go get a high fiber loaf of bread, and oftentimes you'll see on the ingredient list that it'll say cellulose. So yeah, it's food grade sawdust is basically what it amounts to. And so they mix that in and we eat that, but we can't digest it and break apart those molecules. So, it fills us up. It has a function, but its function is not to feed you with energy. It does other things. So what I want to do is I'm going to shrink this thing and put it up in the corner. I'll shrink this slide here, and we'll refer to that over the next few slides, but I want to go down and I want to talk about each one of these things just a little bit more. Okay. All right. So first one we want to talk about is back to the glucose. So it's an essential fuel in our body for energy, and of course, since all plants make this, at least to some degree, it's available in a lot of sources, but some of the most common sources will be in sugars, starches, and fiber, and cellulose, so it's everywhere. It is ubiquitous, lucky for us. But it's essential. You have to have it in order to live. There are some organs in your body that only will feed off of glucose for the most part. And so your brain happens to be one of them. If you're not eating it, then your body will break down proteins or it'll break down fats, and it will make the carbohydrate so that you have the glucose to keep your brain alive and functioning well. So there's another one that is called fructose. This is a non-essential fuel. You could live the rest of your life and never eat fructose and you would thrive. You would do just fine. So it is a simple sugar. It cannot be used throughout the body in the form in which you eat it. It has to go to the liver where it is changed into something that you can utilize. And that's a complicated process, but it's widely available in fruits, in berries, in root vegetables, in high fructose corn syrup, and a variety of other foods, agave syrup, etc. Then the third one we call galactose. And galactose is also a non-essential fuel. Now, unlike the fructose, the galactose has to go to the liver just like the fructose had to. It has to be changed into something else that you can use, but that's a real simple process to do that. It's a two-step process for galactose. The liver just grabs a hold of the end of the molecule, so to speak, and twists it around just a little bit so it's in a different configuration, spits it back out as glucose. That's not the case with fructose. So anyway, it cannot be used throughout the body, so it has to be converted into something else. Now let's talk more about these things that join together. So two glucose molecules join together. Now you have maltose. The thing is, when you eat maltose, it goes in your mouth, and your mouth begins secreting an enzyme called amylase. Well, but it's the amylase that breaks apart this bond. When it gets down to your stomach, your pancreas produces even higher levels of amylase, which go in there and help break apart those bonds between the glucose molecules. And so the end product of digestion for that is just simply glucose. And it's available in beverages, in beer, and cereal, and grain, and pasta. All kinds of foods contain this. And so, now what about sucrose? Again, just like the maltose, these are held together by weak hydrostatic bonds. And the amylase comes along, breaks the two in pieces. There are many sources for them, especially ripe fruits, root vegetables like carrots and beets and parsnips. They contain quite a bit of this sucrose, and it's broken down into glucose and fructose. Lactose. You've heard of people being lactose intolerant. They can't digest this particular sugar. And so it's available in milk and milk products, and so they have to avoid dairy. But when it gets hit by the amylase again, it separates into those two basic units. So you have glucose on the one side, but the other one goes to the liver, and in that real quick process, it's changed into glucose. So for all practical purposes, you're eating glucose there. And then when you eat the starch molecules, they're just chains of glucose. So as those glucose molecules get popped off, you have glucose. So the end product of carbohydrate digestion means your body has to deal with basically two simple sugars. What are they? Glucose and fructose. Very good. So, how are the sugars processed? Well, let's say, for instance, that you eat a pound of glucose. 80% of that pound of glucose is going to be sucked up by every cell in your body where it can be utilized for energy. I mean, insulin just does its job. It gets transferred out of the bloodstream into the cell. All the cells need it. All the cells can use it. And so 20% of it, though, will make its way to the liver. Once it gets to the liver's job is to store it for an emergency situation. So you go to work. It's a real busy day. The customers just keep walking in, one after another. There's all kinds of demands. You don't have time to eat your lunch. 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Lucky for you, you got a liver, otherwise you'd drop dead because your blood sugar would drop. But because you have a liver, enzyme goes to the liver, says, we need you to give up some of your stored energy, so you give up some of the energy that's stored there, and you survive until you can get home and eat dinner. And so, the body can store virtually an infinite amount, if you please, of glucose without getting sick. Now, it's really 2.7 pounds, I think it is. It's either pounds or kilograms. I'm sorry, I'm rusty on that one. But once it's stored in the liver, it can't get out of the liver without the release of certain hormones. So it gets stuck there. And about 1/3 of 1% of that glucose will be stored as VLDL. That's very low density lipo. Yes, thank you. And this is the kind of stuff that, it's the kind of fats that your body will store as cholesterol. And so if you ate a pound of fructose, on the other hand, 100% of that pound of fructose has to go to the liver, where it is changed into something else. Now, oftentimes dietitians will tell people with diabetes, you can't have sugar, but you can use fructose. They'll recommend crystalline fructose, or they'll recommend something like agave syrup, because agave syrup is up to 85% fructose. The problem with that is the fructose can't be used by the cell until it's gone to the liver, and so it has to go through multiple metabolic pathways. Now, we know what they are. You can take a graduate course in carbohydrate metabolism, and you can learn all the chemical pathways that happen in the liver when the liver metabolizes fructose. And it causes liver disease, things like fatty liver disease. Years ago, back in the 1960s, for instance, a doctor could go his entire career and oftentimes not see a case of fatty liver disease. Today, most doctors cannot go an entire day without seeing fatty liver disease. So it's because of our high intake of fructose, I believe, that has been one of the biggest contributors to that. You have other diseases like non-alcoholic cirrhosis and liver cancer. And again, just like the glucose, once it's stored as fat in the liver, it can't get out of the liver without the release of hormones. And 30% of that 1 pound of fructose that you ate will be stored as fat by the liver. So I have simplified some of those chemical reactions just to give you an idea of what's happening. So when you eat fructose, 40% of the fructose will come out of the liver as glucose. And then 30% of it becomes VLDL, the thing that makes cholesterol. So this drives cardiovascular disease and some of the other diseases as well.
Such as insulin resistance.
Yes.
Blocking those cells.
Absolutely. And then what happens to the other 30% of it? Well, some of it is stored as fat, skeletal muscle fat, liver fat, triglycerides, which are blood fats. It causes elevated insulin levels, which we call hyperinsulinemia. It also a portion of it comes out as one of the metabolites of fructose is uric acid. Do you know any diseases that are caused because of elevated uric acid levels? Gout is, yes, almost like the voice of experience. But that's one of the byproducts of eating fructose. And then you also have the production of free radicals. So that causes inflammation. And what all this amounts to is everything here, with the exception of the 40% glucose up above, causes increased insulin resistance. So fructose is the bad carbohydrate. It's going to drive your it's going to drive your diabetes. It's going to make your diabetes worse. It makes your insulin resistance worse. And about this time, usually somebody will say, well, what about fruit? I thought fructose was the sweetener in fruit. Is it? Yes. Yes, it is. So does that mean I shouldn't eat fruit? So in nature, we have discovered, well, Dr. Robert Lustig says this probably the best of anybody. He says, when God packages a toxin in your food supply, He always packages it with the antidote. So the antidote for fructose is fiber. Absolutely. So we need to be sure that we eat it in balance. So take, for instance, a glass of apple juice. Now, a glass of apple juice contains the juice of 6 to 8 apples. Will you sit down in one setting and eat 8 apples? Probably not. But when you drink that glass of apple juice, you're getting all of the calories, most of the calories from the apple without the fiber. So that glass of apple juice is going to make your diabetes worse because it's out of balance. You're now missing the fiber component. When you eat them together, what happens is the fiber goes down to the large intestine. You've assimilated the fructose. It goes to the liver where it has to be changed into all these things. But as the bacteria begin breaking down the fiber goes back and undoes everything that the fructose that was in the apple has been doing. It lowers the insulin level. It binds to the cholesterol that's been formed, takes it to the liver where it can be metabolized, excreted from the body. It just undoes everything that the fructose has been doing. So where we get in trouble is where we've created an imbalance in nature by removing the fiber. And that's one of the reasons why we've said that one of the most important things for you to do is get the fiber back in your diet. It's the antidote for fructose. And fructose is virtually in everything. You read labels. You open a can of vegetables or peas, for instance, in the grocery store. Much of the time it'll have high fructose corn syrup listed on the label. Our sodas. You walk into a restaurant. How many people do you see with a soda there that they drink with their meal? But what they're doing, what's the soda sweetened with? Usually high fructose corn syrup. If it's made with sugar, that's still 50%. High fructose corn syrup is 56% fructose. So you're getting this big load of fructose from these sugary things that we are eating. We used to be that in dietetics we would say a molecule is a molecule is a molecule. It doesn't matter where you get them. So we would get, I would serve people trays, and on this tray we would have Jell-O, but that's sucrose molecule. But as long as you're watching the calories, it's okay. No. I'm telling you, it's not okay. It's not okay. We've created an imbalance in nature, and that's what is fueling our diabetes epidemic, is this thing. So, I want to talk just a little bit about the resistant starch. We sort of skipped over this earlier. Resistant starch is a form of carbohydrate that's sort of in between the starch and the fiber. It's long enough, you can't digest it, but microbes in your body can. So you eat it, and it goes all the way through your small intestine. When it gets to the large intestine, then bacteria begin breaking it down, and then you can assimilate it and use it for energy. But by the time you do that, typically only about 40% of the calories that are there you'll be able to absorb, because by the time it gets to the large bowel, it's on the way out of here. So resistant starch is something that's absolutely wonderful for people with diabetes. Now take, for instance, you take a potato. A potato is full of resistant starch. So you put the baked potatoes in the oven, and you bake them for an hour, hour and 15, whatever you do. And when you pull it out, you can push it on the ends, and it just pops open and says, "Fill me up." Yes. What has happened in the baking process, those resistant starches that were there, they were holding hands. So let's illustrate it this way. They reach out and they're holding hands. And it gets in the heat of the oven, and the heat of the oven breaks apart the hydrostatic bonds between that and breaks these complex molecules down into little short chains of starches. Now, the way you digest starches is an enzyme comes along and attaches itself to both ends of the starch molecule and breaks off the glucose molecule. And when you have a lot of short chains and there's lots of amylase, what's happening? You eat that thing, it goes to your stomach, and immediately what happens to your blood sugar? Within just minutes, it begins to rise. We can track it. Usually it's about 5 or 6 minutes. You'll be able to see the blood sugar starts to rise from eating that baked potato. But you take, say you have some leftovers from your meal, you take those potatoes and you put them in the refrigerator for 24 to 48 hours. What happens is it's just like a couple on a cold winter night. You know, you get in bed together and you say, slide over, honey, I'm so cold. And these hydrostatic bonds reform. But they reform in a different form that's even more resistant than the original. And now you take that out of the refrigerator and you make...
Potato salad.
There you go.
Yes.
And you eat that cold, and the same weight of potato that you ate 2 days ago that spikes your blood sugar, now you can eat it and it won't spike your blood sugar.
That is why the very first night when Sandy made the pasta salad, she cooked the pasta ahead of time and chilled it. Okay? That would increase the resistant starch, which would help your blood sugars not spike so much. Yes, question.
You need to eat that cold?
You don't necessarily have to eat it cold because it does form a different kind of resistant starch. Now, when you eat it again, it will break, when you heat it again, it will break some of those bonds apart, but not as many. So even if you take that, and, like she says, and make cottage fried potatoes out of them or something like that, that is not going to spike your sugar as much as that initial baked potato did.
However, since we're talking about this, now that you've been learning about fiber, what can you have with your baked potato that would slow the starch?
The skin.
Beans.
Beans.
Lentils,
Yes.
I heard broccoli. Yes, those are good things. So the skins do help. The skins have a lot of nutrients in them, but they're not going to have as much fiber as the beans. So if you have a baked potato with chili on it, that's a better choice than to fill it up with butter and sour cream. Okay, so you could still have a hot baked potato, just choose something better, higher fiber to have with it.
So in this class, we're going to tell you you can eat a lot of things that you've been scratching off your menu for a long time. The thing you have to do first, you have to get your fiber levels up. We want your fiber levels up to 50 grams or more. So this coming week, what will our fiber goal be? 40 to 45 grams of fiber a day. There are some people here that are all doing well more than that. They were eating like 40 grams a meal, which is very good. You know, if you're eating 3 meals a day at 40 grams apiece, then you're hitting the 120 mark. But don't do that suddenly. Don't do that suddenly. Anybody that's looking online, if this is your first thing, you need to gradually go up. 10 grams a week, increase it until you get up to 50 grams or more. Then you can pretty much do whatever you want to, and it's not going to make you feel ill.
So it's pretty hard to OD on fiber?
It's hard to OD on fiber once you have gotten the right bacteria growing in your bowel. But that's why we take it up slowly. So your body will adjust and you will start growing the right amount of fiber. Otherwise, it's going to sit there, it's going to ferment, it's going to give you a lot of gas, you won't be nice to be around, you won't like me, and nobody else will like you. So anyway, it's a gradual process you need to take. The other thing is that the high fiber foods are typically associated with high nutrient foods, like we've already said. And when a person goes from a high calorie diet, which the standard American diet is, to a high nutrient diet, it'll oftentimes make them feel sick. They will physically feel sick because they're not used to that level of nutrition in their food. And so we like to gradually move them into it so they don't feel that way. Okay? So good questions. All right. So.
I wanted to ask you allulose. I just bought a bottle of allulose.
Okay, allulose is a sugar alcohol. Sweetener, right?
Yeah, it's a sweet.
Yes, it's a sweetener. It's a sugar alcohol sweetener. And I don't really endorse any artificial sweeteners. We're going to talk more about sweeteners in just a few minutes. So we'll get to those. Okay? And my next slide says other sweeteners. Now people ask me about these all the time. What about agave syrup? Well, typically it's 12% glucose and 56% fructose, but it depends on the manufacturer. Some manufacturers make it with up to 85% fructose and much less of the glucose.
So what did you just learn that what would delay the agave syrup from spiking your blood sugar? Why will it not spike your blood sugar? What did you just learn tonight? No. Where does the fructose have to, where does agave syrup have to? It has to go to the liver.
Absolutely right. It has to go to the liver. It has to be metabolized there.
So there's a delay in that process.
And so it's not going to spike your blood sugar. If you're looking at the blood sugar as the issue, then you're going to think you're doing yourself a favor by eating it. And that's why a lot of dietitians have told you it's okay to have agave syrup or fructose, because they're looking at the blood sugar. I don't fault them. This is the way that they've been trained. But
You've heard him say, I don't care what your blood sugar is? Have you heard him say that to you? I don't care what your blood sugar is doing. What he cares about is what's causing the blood sugar to be high. If you take care of what's causing it, the blood sugar will come down.
So if you eat fructose with abandon, you're going to have diabetes for the rest of your life. But if you eat your fructose with the fiber, you're going to get over your diabetes. It's just going to go away. And we've seen it happen over and over again. So anyway, what about turbinado sugar? Some people call this a healthy sugar. Well, instead of it being 100% sucrose, it's 99% sucrose and it's 1% impurities. Okay? So basically you have sucrose, and sucrose, you remember, is made up of glucose and fructose. So by weight, it's 49.5% fructose. So that's where the 49.5 comes from. Brown sugar is 95% sucrose. It has 1% glucose naturally, and it also has 1% fructose. So you take half of the sucrose, you divide that in half, you have 47.5, and you add 1% glucose or fructose that's already there. So you have 48.5% fructose in brown sugar. Honey is 41% fructose. It's a refined sweetener, but the bees did the refining. Okay? Then you have pure maple syrup. We're not talking about the imitation stuff. Imitation stuff is sweetened with what? High fructose corn syrup. Absolutely right. But so what this is talking about the pure maple syrup, and the pure maple syrup is 30% fructose, so it's a much better option. And then you take molasses, that's even better. Mountains of Tennessee, we have a lot of molasses that's available. And so that's 27.5% fructose. And then the rest is glucose and such. So those are various sweeteners that are available for us. Now, this was some information that was sorted out by scholars at Harvard University. And they were looking at the different kinds of fats. Where do we get fats from? You know, if you're watching your carbs because you're trying not to get fat, what do we know about that? So they were looking at the source of where the fat is made and what kind of impact that had on your body. So if the fat was made from glucose, extra was usually burned off if it was not needed. In other words, your body actually ramps up its basal metabolism and burns off those calories if it comes from glucose. So the baked potato is glucose. And it's probably not going to make you fat. Only a very small portion will be retained as fat, we learned. And it is associated with longevity. If the fat that you gain is gained because you're eating high carbohydrate, high glucose foods, then it's associated with longevity. It's also associated with increased insulin sensitivity. Did you get that? That's the opposite of insulin resistance. So when you're eating those kind of carbohydrates, the glucose-based carbohydrates, they are going to help you actually make your diabetes better. So if the fat is made from fructose, if the fat is made from fructose, these scholars found out that the majority of that energy is stored as fat. And it results in significant weight gain. And it's associated with increased insulin resistance. That is, it's making your diabetes worse. And it's only released from the liver by hormones. And there's two of them. One's epinephrine. This is the fight or flight hormone. And you may, you remember those vivid dreams you have when during the night something like a bear jumps out in front of you and you take off and you're just running for all you can to get away from the bear. Well, that shot of adrenaline that you get is going to help you lower your fat level. It's going to help increase your insulin resistance. So it will help you actually reverse your diabetes. So the take-home message about this is, if you want to reverse your diabetes, one of the things you can do is live on the edge. So take up extreme sports, go downhill skiing, try skydiving, drive fast, run the red lights, do all that kind of stuff that gives you that real adrenaline pump. Or you can utilize the other hormone, which is glucagon. Now, glucagon is only secreted from the stomach and intestines when the stomach and intestines are empty. In other words, if you don't about in the morning, your stomach and intestines have run out of food. So it sends a hormonal signal to the liver, and that hormonal signal is this hormone that's called glucagon. So the liver give up some of what you got. And so the liver release some of the glucose to keep your blood sugar level up. But what I want you to understand here is it's fructose that's the carbohydrate that causes weight gain. That's the carbohydrate that makes your diabetes worse. The other carbohydrate, the glucose-based carbohydrate, eat up. Those are the ones that are going to make you healthy in the long run. So, intermittent fasting is the most helpful ways that we know of. One of the fasting. Get up in the morning and you eat your breakfast. Make sure it's a high-fiber breakfast, and you eat heartily. That's fine. If you don't eat supper, you'll probably be like me. I get up in the morning and I'm ready to eat the wallpaper off the walls on the way to the kitchen. And so after you've had a hearty breakfast, high fiber, then usually about 6 hours later, 5.5 to 6 hours later, you can do a lunch. And after you've done that lunch, then don't eat again until the next morning at breakfast time. You'll be ready to eat a hearty breakfast again, but about 4 o'clock in the morning, what happens is you release that glucagon and it will release sugar. Now, one of the things that happens in a lot of people with diabetes is something we know as the dawn phenomenon. And the dawn phenomenon is, say for instance, you don't eat a supper and your blood sugar might be, let's say it's 116 when you go to bed. You wake up the next morning and you check your blood sugar, you haven't had a thing to eat overnight, and it's 345. That's a problem, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's called the dawn phenomenon. And what has happened is because you didn't eat, your stomach got empty, and during the night you released this hormone called glucagon, and it went to the liver, and the liver released extra sugar. But because you're insulin resistant, you can't get it into the cells, so your blood sugar rises. Now, what is the typical solution to that problem? If the doctor is focused on blood sugar, what he tells you is you need to eat a bedtime snack. So you eat cheese and crackers or something like that for supper. And that doesn't happen then because the cheese and the crackers stay in your intestine and they're continuing to feed you over the course of the night. Next morning you get up and your blood sugar is like you might expect, maybe 110 or something like that. But the problem with that therapy is it's going to keep you diabetic the rest of your life. The fatty liver is caused because you've stored too much stuff there. You need to get it out of there. And so the solution becomes night after night you want to make this happen. You want to release it. You want that liver to give up the extra glucose. You do that on a repeated basis, and pretty soon, usually within just a couple weeks, the liver will give up enough glucose that the dawn phenomenon will go away. And how do you control it the next? Are you going to inject insulin? Or do you maybe go for a walk for 30 minutes first? I suggest you follow the lifestyle approach, go for a walk for 30 minutes, then come back and check your sugar again. Most of the time you will find that the blood sugar will actually come down significantly. If it's still elevated after 30 minutes of exercise, then go ahead and do your insulin. If you're on insulin. And otherwise, your sugar should march right on down. So intermittent fasting is one of the fastest ways that we know to defat the liver and help make diabetes go away. Once the liver is defatted, then your fasting sugars in the morning will return to normal. Normal being between 76 and 100. And so when you reach that milestone, don't say I've reversed my diabetes, because that's only a part of the equation. Diabetes is caused because you have too much fat in the liver and in the pancreas. And it's fairly easy to get it out of the liver. It's a lot harder to get it out of the pancreas. So if it takes you, let's say it takes you 6 weeks to get the morning fasting sugars down into the normal range, then you need to plan on 6 times longer than that you stay on the program, because it probably will take you about 36 weeks on that same program in order to defat the pancreas. So take the long shot view of this, and you will be successful. It's not what you do one day; it's what you do multiple days that leads you there. What about these various? You were asking about some of the sugar alcohols, but they sort of fall in the list with these other things. Sunette, just scratch them all off, guys. The more we've studied about this, the more we find that they don't really help. I would rather you have the glucose-based sweeteners. Just regular corn syrup is a glucose-based sweetener. It's not the high fructose corn syrup. The high fructose corn syrup is a different animal. But if you must have a sweetener, try something natural, like maybe recipes that call for dates. That's what we use in our oatmeal at home. We'll cook enough for 2 people, and we just put 2 dates in it. The medjool dates, we like those the best in the oatmeal. And it'll drive your sugars up a little bit if you're focused on the sugar, but it's also high in fiber. Yes?
That's what I was going to say. It's got fiber.
It's got fiber. And when we're eating the fiber along with the fructose, even if naturally, in the natural state, you're getting sucrose, You're getting natural fructose, but you're also getting the fiber. So it's going to undo the damage that you've been doing by eating the refined foods. So that's one of the reasons I've become a very strong advocate of eating the whole food. Yes?
The dates have 1 gram of fiber per day. If you eat 3 dates, you've got 3 grams of fiber.
Okay, he says you eat 3 dates, you've got 3 grams of fiber.
That's what's on the package if you eat the whole day.
Okay?
Stuff it with peanut butter or almond butter.
Yes. Well, you can do that, to a certain degree. You certainly can. And we're going to be talking about fats next week, I believe it is. So, yes, ma'am.
Those 2 top ones are excitotoxins that mess up your brain.
Oh, absolutely. It does mess up the brain and increases your drive to eat. So, it will increase your hunger, and it just makes, eating these foods makes a person gain more weight than eating the naturally sweetened fruits, things of that nature. So this is a worse alternative than actually eating the real stuff if you're eating the whole food. So I recommend, even the sugars too. So, but that's a topic for another week, I guess. Any other questions that we have about tonight's lecture? Exciting stuff, isn't it? Yes.
There, you're scratching all the substitutes. In your book, you said the only sugar substitute you recommend is stevia.
Yes, that's correct. We did recommend stevia for a while. It's one of the better sugar substitutes. But there have been some studies out recently that indicate that stevia is an endocrine disruptor. And if, endocrine disruptors, that's disrupting your hormonal cycles. And so for that reason, we have chosen to actually pull it off our list of approved things, and I hid the slide in my lecture for that reason. So,
And I threw mine out at home.
yeah,
So we have stopped using it. I use maple syrup or molasses. I put molasses in my bread, or honey. Those are my 3 choices now because they are better. And the stevia that we used to use, I got rid of it because of this endocrine issue. So.
It does have, I know, I read some of the erythritol, whatever.
erythritol?
The alcohol sugar.
Yes.
Put with it.
Right.
That messes things up, and then it's got it in the monk fruit too.
Yes, it does.
Yes, we saw that.
These things, and they have a glucose with these things.
Right. Now, the glucose is not bad.
Except
the
that
glucose
these things
is not bad,
are
but these
bad.
things are bad. Yes, question.
Coconut sugar.
What about coconut sugar?
Yeah, in cooking, adding a little
Okay.
bit like baking bread or whatever.
Right. Coconut sugar is a sucrose-based sugar. So you're going to get 50% sucrose, and you're going to get 50% glucose out of the sugar portion. Of course, you're going to have some impurities and things like that in there as well. So, but it's still, still a sucrose-based sugar. So you're going to have 50% of the sucrose is fructose. So, the best thing is to go with the whole food. But if you're going to use sweeteners, here's the thing. If you can cut your sweeteners down significantly and not try to eat such sweet foods, but find those recipes, you can go look for whole food, plant-based desserts. And you can come up with some awesome desserts. They're sweet, they're delightful, they're sweetened with sweet fruits like dates or pineapple or other such, and they can be very delightful. In fact, in your book, you have
There's a couple in there, but it uses maple syrup. The cookies use maple syrup.
right. The cookies use maple syrup,
And I
but,
think the lemon pie uses honey.
But there are a lot of recipes that will use better sweeteners in them. So if I had a choice between coconut sugar and just plain white refined sugar, I'd probably choose the coconut sugar. But if I had a choice between coconut sugar and the whole, the sweetened fruit, the whole food, then I would go with the whole food. I think that's just the safest way to do it in order to
Be
to
healthier.
reverse your diabetes. Okay, good questions. What are we going to do next week? Well, we're going to talk about fats that make diabetes worse. Now, you know, typically we get the advice, well, when you get a diagnosis of diabetes, then you can't eat carbs, so what do you have to eat? You eat more fat and you eat more protein. And as we study into it, we find out that there are some fats that make diabetes worse. So don't miss next week's lecture. It's going to be a good one. And it says, be ye doers of the word and not hearers only. It doesn't do you any good to just come and learn this stuff. You got to do it.
I think we have a team of doers here.
Yep.
They're really seeing a lot of improvements.
Okay. So in just a few moments, we're going to break up into our discussion groups. And I want you to discuss your new understanding of carbohydrates in the group. And then review how to increase carbohydrates without increasing your blood sugar. I want you to plan a one-day menu with 40 to 45 grams of fiber in that for the day, a total. And then identify your most difficult goal. What area of those 8 goal areas are you having the most trouble with? And then, if you would, talk with the different people in your group about how they think that you could possibly overcome that problem, whatever your barrier is there. And complete another SMART goal sheet for this week. Debbie, why don't we do, before we go to exercise, why don't we do the giveaways now?
Does everyone put their ticket in the basket?